How was school today? Fine. Those two words. For many parents, a single syllable from a teenager can instantly trigger a terrifying mental projection. You imagine them falling behind, socially isolated, completely lost in a system that doesn't care about them. This panic comes from a place of deep love, but excessive parental involvement actually restricts a student's ability to develop resilience. Constant texting throughout the school day, stepping in to solve peer disputes, or micromanaging assignments deprive students of the autonomy they need to navigate challenges on their own. To understand why this happens, cognitive scientists look at a concept called affordances. An affordance is simply an actionable opportunity present in a specific environment. A sturdy branch affords climbing. A teacher's pause affords a chance to ask a question. This diagram outlines the five-dimensional affordance framework developed by educational researchers Yen and Doan. It breaks down how a learner interacts with their environment into five distinct categories: perceptibility, valence, compositionality, normativity, and intentionality. By mapping the classroom and home environments across these five dimensions, educators and parents can systematically identify where anxiety is short-circuiting a child's development and replace that fear with a structured architecture for healthy growth. The first dimension is perceptibility, how clearly an opportunity or problem is noticed. When parents operate from a state of educational anxiety, they often develop a hyper-vigilant focus. They magnify single, out-of-context details, like one missed homework assignment or a passing comment about a classmate, and misperceive them as major crises. To counter this, teachers often guide parents to resort their observations. By filtering raw anxieties into three strict buckets: verifiable facts, unproven assumptions, and items to passively monitor, parents regain cognitive clarity and stop reacting to phantom threats. Once you see the environment clearly, the next dimension is valence. This refers to the emotional value attached to a learning opportunity. Does the student perceive a task as a meaningful, positive challenge or as a high-risk threat to their identity? If a parent aggressively demands immediate grade results, they assign a negative valence to schoolwork, increasing the child's depression and lowering self-efficacy. Conversely, asking a child how they navigated a tricky group project assigns positive valence, framing the struggle itself as a valuable, safe process. Correctly identifying the reality of a situation through perceptibility and framing it with supportive valence form the baseline alignment for neutralizing the cycle of educational anxiety. The third dimension, compositionality, looks at how multiple elements combine to shape an experience. A single text checking in on a test seems harmless, but frequent texts, tracking apps, and intervening in minor conflicts accumulate into a stifling environment, restricting independence. This over-involvement is driven by the fourth dimension, normativity. Parents feel immense pressure from a culture of hyper-competitiveness and rigid expectations about success. These invisible rules dictate that any failure is permanent, forcing parents to hover out of a sense of duty. Educators must actively intercept these toxic norms by setting strict communication boundaries, like refusing to reply to midnight emails, and communicating the actual developmental value of making mistakes. Teachers protect the child's psychological space from external panic. This brings us to the final dimension, intentionality. It asks whether an action is driven by a deliberate educational goal or by impulsive reaction. High intentionality means feeling the urge to fire off a demanding, emotionally charged email to a teacher at 11 p.m. and choosing instead to delete it. The parent waits and sends a concise, factual note the following morning to schedule an appointment. When a student's physical environment is given breathing room, social norms allow for failure, and parental interventions are intentional, adult involvement stops being a tool for risk management and becomes a framework for genuine empowerment. In practice, this new ecology starts in the classroom. A teacher sees two students arguing over lab equipment, and instead of solving the dispute, they deliberately step back. They provide the affordance of space, allowing the students to practice conflict resolution. This diagram illustrates education as a layered neuroecological system. At the center is the learner, surrounded by concentric rings of institutional, social, and policy support. In a healthy system, adults maintain those outer rings by tracking factual progress and sharing the monitoring burden, intentionally leaving a void in the middle for the child to grow into. Back at the family dinner table, the dynamic changes entirely. Because the parents have stepped out of the role of constant interrogators and managers, the pressure dissipates. In this relaxed, supportive environment, the child volunteers a story about a difficult test on their own terms. Building a superior educational ecosystem does not mean ignoring problems or eliminating all parental concern. It requires adults to precisely calibrate their support, ensuring their interventions happen at the correct time, in the right role, and at the appropriate scale. By understanding the 5 dimensions of affordance, we map exactly how our fears alter our behavior. We stop hovering and start designing the exact systemic architecture our children need to thrive.